Welcome, everybody. We're going to give folks a few minutes to join in. Hopefully, you can see my screen here. But while we're waiting for folks to join us, why don't we get to know a little bit more about you all? I'd love to hear from you in the chat. Share where you're tuning in from, your organization, your mission. Let's see who we have with us today. All right, we've got Scott from NAMI Syracuse. Welcome. We've got Alex from San Francisco. Welcome, welcome. Sophia from Silicon Valley Education Foundation. Welcome, Terry from Florida. Amy and Catherine and Sarah and Monica and Lila. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that correctly. Brittany, Christine. It's great to have you all with us today. Alexandra, Gina, Mahmood, Catherine. All right, Hey Jay, lots of representation from all over the country. Jessica from Extra Table Feeds, a food bank that provides food for 68 pantries across the state. Wow. Stacy, Cheyenne, Jay, Julia, amazing, amazing, amazing. Great to have you all here with us today. All right. Hello, Stephen. Okay. Keep them coming. Keep letting us know who's here. We're going to jump into some content here in just a second. All right, so going to share a little bit more about who we are leading this webinar with you today. Some of you I know, some of you I'm meeting you for the first time, but I'm Amber Melanie Smith. I am a nonprofit and social impact strategist and also content creator on YouTube, where I share educational tutorials and content all about nonprofit leadership, fundraising, and more. And love to introduce my friend Susan here to share a little bit more about herself.
Sure. I'm Susan Higgs. I'm the Director of Training here at Click and Pledge. I have been working with Click and Pledge for 18 years now and also have experience in the nonprofit sector myself. So I'm so glad to be here today.
Amazing. And for those of you just joining, we are inviting you to drop a little bit more about yourselves in the chat, where you're tuning in from, your organization, etc. We'd love to get to know you a little bit better. All right, we've got Teddy and Michelle and Margaret from Raleigh. That's my hometown. Welcome, welcome. Okay, a little bit more about what to expect today. This is what we're going to talk through. There's going to be plenty of time for questions, but we're going to kick off by doing a little bit of discussion around the current landscape, the current fundraising trends we're seeing, the challenges that were out there that we know will probably feel very like everyday life to you all, but perhaps hearing about some of what's going on out there will help you feel a little bit less alone, at least. Then we're going to talk about what are some of the specific challenges you all are facing on this call. We have a poll that we'll do. Then we're going to get right into those strategies that we promised. What do we see working? And what are some practical steps that you can take to try some of these things out in your work? Then we're going to jump into Q&A, where you'll have an opportunity to share what's on your mind, ask whatever questions you have about anything that we've discussed, and then we'll wrap up. It'll be a fun time. And just a little bit of housekeeping for you. If this is your first time joining a Zoom webinar, there is a Q&A feature. You should see the button at the bottom of your screen where you can submit your questions. You can submit your questions at any time, but just know that we are going to answer the majority of them during our Q&A. And if there's something quick or a technical question that one of our panelists here can answer quickly, they might drop the response into the text as we're going along. So if anyone has any challenges seeing that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, let me know. You're welcome to give it a try. Drop in a question preemptively to let us know it works out. And then we'll get to your questions towards the end. All right. Susan, are you ready to talk about some fundraising challenges and trends?
Absolutely.
Okay. feel like I'm talking really fast, out of breath. Okay. Okay. Welcome to some of our new folks here. We got Lisa, Andrea, Eve in the chat. Thank you so much for introducing yourselves. Okay. Let's take a pause here and just acknowledge some of the things that we're seeing out there in the world. And as I'm sharing some of these, and as Susan is sharing some of the things she's seeing as well, let us know in the chat. Does this feel like something you're experiencing? Are you seeing this in your community? So, how many of you would agree with this trend that we're seeing? 85% of nonprofits are expecting community demand to increase. Is this you? I see Nick raising their hand. Lisa, yep, very much so. Yes. Myrna, Amy, yep. Yep, lots of yeses. Okay. What about this one? A third of nonprofits experiencing disruptions due to loss of federal grants or contracts. And this might not impact all of you, but at least not directly. But indirectly, it might have an impact on you. Yes, Shannon says yes. Alex says yes. Lisa. Big yes from Stacy. Indirectly from Jay. Yep. Yes. Okay. Um, Now, Susan, I know that you have done some exploration of this as well. So why don't you share a little bit about what you're seeing?
Sure. And we were hearing the same thing on our side as well. We were hearing from customers. We have a time, we call it live support, where customers can join us and ask questions. And so during some of those conversations, again, hearing similar types of things. So at the beginning of the year, what we decided to do was send out a survey to see how everybody was faring. And I thought with this topic, I'd share some of the results that we had with that survey. Now, so this particular question was basically, were you impacted by economic or policy changes? And again, you can see of our survey respondents, over 70% said that they have been affected. And so for those people that responded yes, we then asked, well, what has changed? And by far, the majority of them did say federal grants, losing federal grants. Some stated state grants, and then others stated more of a general economic uncertainty that was making donors feel uneasy and just causing, some changes, economic changes, less donations.
Yeah, definitely. I'm hearing this as well with the nonprofits that I work with. Um, let's talk about the next one, which is kind of a ripple effect, right? So even if you weren't impacted directly by those federal grants or contract changes, what we are seeing is that it has led to some competition for other funding sources across the sector. So there are some reports that total giving donations are up in dollar amount, but paired with that is that there are fewer individuals giving. So maybe a smaller pool of donors are giving larger amounts, but what that means is that those same donors might not be donating to, say, as many organizations as they have been before. And I'm seeing some comments in the chat. Melissa J says this is 100% of what we're seeing. So this is a little bit about what's going out there. And Susan, tell us a little bit more about some of this engagement that you're seeing as well.
Right, right. So another question that we asked on the survey is, so has your fundraising and or donor engagement changed recently? And again, you can see over 60% of respondents did say that that has changed. Um, Now that can mean a lot of different things. So for those people, we did ask them to provide us some comments. Um, so I think I have that on, yeah, the next slide. And again, this is kind of a mirror image of what you were just saying. The first statement on there: revenue is down, our mission field has grown, right? So less donations, but the need is greater than it has been in the past. Just overall comments like less donations, some interesting ones, and this next one, smaller events, annual galas out. I am hearing that from other nonprofits as well, that some of the larger events that they've done in the past, maybe that have a lot of moving wheels, that can sometimes cause burnout by staff or board members, that instead of doing things like that, they're changing it to maybe more educational luncheons, or other smaller type of events that maybe have a fundraising aspect to it, like maybe a smaller live auction or silent auction or things like that. But essentially, sometimes fundraising is pivoting in certain directions. Other comments in here, that people are communicating the challenges out to the community, and they are gaining new members as a result, or that people are reevaluating the donation amounts that they're asking for, boosting them some. I mean, prices have changed, everything has changed. So maybe boosting the amounts at this time, again, that might help bring in some larger donations. And then I think the last statement I just really love, because it really goes to the resilience that people working in nonprofits have. But it's, we didn't receive as much as we normally have previously, but we're going to have a great year regardless. So a wonderful testimony there.
I love that. And actually, you've got this great data on this next slide here that really gives me hope. So tell me what we're looking at here.
Right. And we also wanted to ask about, what keeps people motivated? How is your team feeling about achieving your mission in 2026? And so 1 to 10 scale, 10 being the most optimistic. And you can see on here, right? Nobody is at the lower end of the scale. No one's at the bottom here. People are still remaining very optimistic, even though there are obstacles. So this really does, again, give us all some optimism for the future.
And you were kind of saying this before, it's just like a key trait of nonprofits, right? And so I want to wrap up this section about, trends and challenges just by kind of pointing out a few things here. Um, Nonprofits, and I hope that you all feel this, you all have a very unique position in society that is your superpower that you should lean into. I don't know if you've ever seen any of the studies on which institutions are the most trusted in the United States or around the world. Nonprofits consistently rank the highest of compared to companies and even government, et cetera. Right? So you all should lean into that. And we're going to get into here in just a minute some of the strategies that we're seeing working for fundraising this year. But I want to share that they tend to follow these three themes: trust, which I just talked about. So, how can you continue to build trust and retain trust? That's going to be key for your fundraising. Clarity. How can you get more clear on your impacts, what you're raising money for? And then this third one is really interesting: connection. You might have seen over the past couple of years that we're facing a loneliness and isolation epidemic. And nonprofits have the ability to be a solution for that. So, whenever you can lean into that, we're seeing that when people are brought together in community, especially in person where possible, that fundraising is made easier. So, just a couple of themes to keep in mind as we get into the strategies that we're going to talk about next. But before we do that, Susan, I really loved some of these comments, kind of hearkening to what I was just saying. If you want to share some of these too.
Sure, sure. And yeah, and this last one, asking people, what has given them hope and encouragement. And again, so many wonderful comments, as you can read through here. But, you're still seeing people really having hope and encouragement from their community, from their donors. These are people that are motivating to keep going forward, that they're seeing new, enthusiastic, younger supporters stepping in, and sometimes support coming in from unexpected places. So I think these are wonderful statements to the hope that everyone has going forward.
And, we've shared some of these challenges, but I'm also curious to know the specific challenges of those here with us today. So I'm going to launch this poll and let's just take a look at what you all are facing. What are some of your top fundraising challenges this year? All right, I'm seeing lots of folks jump in here. We got attracting new donors is in the lead so far. Retaining donors, obtaining sponsorships or grants. Some of you are dealing with a sudden shift in funding or other things as well. So we'll take just another minute here to see what you all are thinking on this. And Susan, can you see the live results here?
I can.
Okay. All right. Answers are starting to slow down here. Jay in the comment says our current members are very loyal, but new donors are difficult. All right. Susan, what do you think about the results that we're seeing here? Is this sort of
Yeah,
vibe with you?
I think it does. Do you want to go ahead and end the poll?
Yeah. I think folks are done taking the poll, so I'm going to end the poll here. And let's see. I'm sharing the results. Hopefully, you can all see this. But this is basically what you all said. The top response: attracting new donors, followed by obtaining sponsorships or grants, then retaining current donors, then sudden shifts in funding, and something else. So that's kind of what we're working with today. Let's get into some of these strategies that we're seeing working out there. And I think some of you might actually be surprised about some of these things that we're going to share based on those poll results. All right, so let's talk about these three fundraising strategies. The first is experimenting with revenue diversification. Diversification. But let me get clear about what this means because I think the word diversification is thrown out a lot. And I don't want people to think that it means that you have to be doing everything. In fact, there's some solid research that talks about how if you try to spread yourself too thin in fundraising, you're actually not going to do as well in any fundraising. And when you think about the reasons why that would be the case, it makes some sense, right? So one type of fundraising, let's say grant writing, requires one set of skills, but another type of fundraising, like major donors, requires a totally different set of skills. So maybe you have a set of skills and your strengths align with a couple of different types, but not some over here. Well, if you try to do everything, you're going to spread yourself too thin. So I just want us to keep this in mind as we talk a little bit more about what diversification looks like. Okay. There are four main tactics that we're seeing get some really solid traction in 2026. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through how to not just try to do all of these, to not jump into one and throw everything you've got at it, but to start with some small scale experiments to figure out what works first, because we're all working on a small amount of resources. We can't afford to throw our resources into something that might not work out, right? So how can we do some small scale experiments to try to figure out what new tactics could work for us? The first step is really to pick a hypothesis to test out, right? It could be, we think our volunteers would participate in a monthly giving program if we launched one. It could be, we think that companies would sponsor this new workshop that we have that their employees could participate in. So pick your hypothesis, then you're going to outline a small scale pilot test. What's the smallest thing that you can try? What's the smallest little offer you can put out there to just test it in a low risk way? Then you're going to run your test and you're going to document the feedback and the results that you get. And then you're going to check for indicators of success to know if that fundraising activity could be worth doubling down on and investing in further. So what are some of those indicators of success? Well, first, there was demand. People wanted the thing that you were offering or were willing to participate in it. Could be donors for a monthly giving program, could be sponsors for a specific new offering. funders converted after you tried asking. Margin. This is a really important and underestimated one. We talk about events in fundraising sometimes as uh, not always being worth it. Really depends, right? Because might cost you a certain amount to put on the event, but then also costs you staff time, volunteer time, etc. And everything's an opportunity cost. Time you spend doing this means it's time you're not spending doing this over here. So is the net revenue that you were able to raise enough to cover all of those costs? Is it repeatable? Is this something you can keep doing without having to reinvent the wheel every time? Is it something that adds and strengthens your trust and your credibility with your donors, your partners, and your community? Or does it diminish your trust and your relationship with them? And then this is the most important one, mission fit. Does it deepen your core impact? Does it help you work towards your ultimate mission and vision, or is it just a distraction? So if your pilot test achieves these indicators of success, you might have something there. So let's talk about what it might look like to run experiments with some of these different things. With recurring or monthly giving, if you're not doing this already, add a monthly giving button to your website and make it the most prominent button. Instead of a one-time gift, make monthly giving the most prominent thing. And then email a small segment of your donors to ask if they'd be willing to become monthly supporters. For peer-to-peer, invite supporters to share something they're passionate about with fundraising. You want to help them get involved and feel a sense of ownership over a peer-to-peer campaign by letting them help design the campaign itself. For corporate partnerships, it might look like creating a quick flyer, pitching one new offering that might appeal to companies, and then trying it out with 5 to 10 different companies. Or with earned income models or program fees, it could be creating an interest page and collecting signups for your new service or your new product. So this is just a couple of tips on how to run small scale experiments so that you don't pivot hard into something that might not work out for you. All right, let's talk a little bit about the second strategy. And this is the one that I think is going to surprise some of you, because we talked about a lot of you having challenges with attracting new donors, and new donors are important. But I want to really drive home how important retention is also. Okay, how many of you knew this? Put it in the chat. Did you know that it costs 7.5 times more to acquire a new donor than it does to retain an existing donor? Laura says yes. Jay says yes. Andrea, no, that's all right. No, but I can believe it. Yes. I don't know if any of you have like a business background, but I've heard that this is true for sales too, right? It's cheaper to keep a customer than to try to gain a new customer. Yep, exactly. Alex pointed that out. Yep. Yep. Okay. So given that, something to think about, right? The other thing is monthly and recurring giving, it connects to retention in ways I'll share in just a minute. But this is a major area for growth as well. Monthly giving has seen a 5% increase over the past couple of years, and 31% of all online giving revenue in 2024 was monthly giving. So if you are not already not just doing monthly giving, but emphasizing monthly giving, you are missing out on a big opportunity. Okay. Here's the connection, right, between monthly giving and retention overall. If you get one donation, the likelihood of that person coming back, that retention rate, is 14%. That's really low, right? But if you can help that donor become a second-time donor, that retention rate jumps to 30%. And if you can get that donor to become someone who's given 3 to 6 times, now their retention rate year over year is 55%. And for those who give 7 or more times, you've got a loyal donor for the long term at 86%. And this is from the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. I have something fun that I made. If you want to just think about like what it would look like for your organization to focus on retention. There's this little calculator that I made you can play with. I put the link in the chat. You can do it later or whatever, but I just thought it was fun. All right. Susan, tell us a little bit more about like this retention piece here and increasing giving here.
Yeah. So I wanted to share, I think this was an interesting study that was done at Yale. And we're always interested in donor behavior, right? That's what we need to be thinking about. And through the research, they found that really some simple messaging changes can really significantly increase giving. So now this particular study was done for getting that first donation. Some of the messaging that can be changed, but really, when you think of the communication tool, it can be used for the first donation and it can be used for retaining donors as well. But some of the basically the recommendations that they had from this particular study were like making sure that with your communications that you are communicating how your work solves real issues, not just the problems that you face, but that you're in the business of solutions. Next, they said, be able to provide tangible, visible results that donors can identify with. So that's really something where, your storytelling can come into play. People need to be able to visualize the impact of their donation. And the other thing that I found interesting about the study is it talked about motivational language being aligned with the donor's values. So, for instance, this particular study, a lot of the study was done with environmental organizations. And they found that language, typically you might have like a give now button or something like that. They used a give and learn button. And that give and learn was so much more successful than just the give now. So if you can think about the type of people that are interested in your organization supporting you. Maybe people are looking to be a part of a community, things like that, to engage with you emotionally. Maybe some of the language is, join our community champions, become a part of something bigger. So just, kind of thinking about the language that you're using to attract and retain these new donors. And this kind of aligns with the next tool that I'm going to be talking about, because you do need to be thinking about, okay, if I am going to be asking people to give again, we're not concerned about that first gift. Now we want them to become a recurring donor, give in the future. What are the ways that you are showing gratitude? So we're just kind of talking about, well, nonprofits, identifying problems and coming up with solutions. So so this particular tool that I'm going to be talking about is a tool that our customers challenged us to come up with. So the problem was, how can nonprofits thank someone personally, but also not be bogged down by the staff time that it takes to do that? So we came up with a tool called Shout Out. And what it does is it works with a mobile app that we have. So we have a mobile app. And within the app, there's this area called Shout Out. And, it's pretty straightforward. It has a list of the donors' names. It has the amount that they've given. So since you are on your phone or your tablet, you can very quickly record a message. Could be a video message. It can be an audio message. Obviously, I think the video is the better way to go. It's more personal, and send it. I mean, it's just as easy as that. But you're creating a unique experience for that donor. You're personalizing it because, you know the name, you know the amount that they've donated, but those other pieces that you can pull into it, like the storytelling, or maybe if you have opportunities for people to learn more about your organization, while you're creating that little video thank you for them, you can send them that information as well. So it's a way to engage them on a whole different level. And it really, checks a lot of boxes of what you're looking to do to thank your donors specifically and personally.
This is really key. I was on LinkedIn the other day, and this woman was posting about her experience donating to a cause. And she was saying she got a personalized message, not like a generic, overly branded email or newsletter, though those have their place. Um, but she got a quick message, a quick check-in, like once every couple of weeks, and she became a recurring donor as a result. She had such a good experience. So talking about, what are some of the specific things that you all can do to improve your donor retention right now? Susan talked about this, that personalized thank you within ideally a couple of days. We know folks get busy, but if possible, you can even have a volunteer board member help with this. Three touch points to the second gift. Do not ask donors immediately after the first gift for a second gift, but give them some other opportunities to engage with you. You might share a quick update, quick impact that occurred, or even an opportunity to come volunteer with your organization or to do a quick tour or meet you for coffee. Having those touch points in between donations can really make all the difference. And then on the recurring giving side, if you're going to build or amplify your current monthly giving program, here are some things you can do. You want to give it a name. You want to give your monthly giving program a name and its own identity. So let's say you're an animal rescue. Maybe it's the puppy protectors or something. That sounds like something I'd want to join. You want to make people feel like they're joining a community, something that they're a part of, something that's special. I said this before, but just reiterating, you want to position recurring giving as the primary way to give, not just a secondary afterthought. You want to explain why and how monthly giving helps. Yes, share your impacts, but also how it helps with the sustainability of your organization, right? Yep, puppy protectors, Stephen. um, there's been some experiments out there where organizations put language like your monthly giving program helps provide our organization with the stability we need to plan ahead. And they've seen that kind of language, so people understand why monthly giving is important, that can drive up donations. Obviously, an administrative thing here, stay on top of expiring credit cards, and then don't leave out volunteers. A lot of people think, oh, well, they're already volunteering. It's just greedy to ask them to also donate. But it's actually the opposite. Volunteers are some of the most common donors. 67% want to give where they volunteer. I'm curious what you all think about why that might be the case. So if you have any thoughts, drop it in the chat. But I will say we think it has something to do with that trust factor. You're just more likely to trust an organization that you've already had some interaction with. And as a volunteer, you do that. You see what things are like behind the scenes. Um, so, Susan, do you want to share a little bit more about like how to like technically power some of this stuff?
Yeah, and specifically to that point that you just made about like staying on top of expiring credit cards and things like that. You want to make sure that as you're ramping up your recurring donations, that you have a tool in place to help you manage it because it can really bog your staff down with administrative time. So a tool that we have. So, for example, we have this tool called Recurring Updater. And, you know, decline cards happen, right? People cancel credit cards, they change credit cards for whatever reason, things like that happen. So, with Recurring Updater, what happens is if a decline transaction happens, so that monthly gift comes in, there's a decline, it's set up so that an automated email can go out that's personalized to that donor, letting them know that they can update the credit card information themselves. Easy peasy way to manage that. But you can even be more proactive. We have a tool called Recurring Updater Link. that you can actually add to the automated receipts that go out when donations occur. So that allows your donors to, if they know, well, I just canceled that credit card, I need to update it. Whenever they have an opportunity right then and there to be proactive, update their credit card or payment information, whatever they're choosing to do, um, right then and there. They don't have to involve you, the nonprofit, at all. And you can also take it a step further because you also have the ability within this tool, if you want to allow them to update their name, their email address. Maybe they have a new preferred email address. Maybe they've gotten married and they have a name change. Uh, if you want to allow them to update their donation amount, you can do that as well. It's all your choice. But from what we're hearing, donors appreciate that they're given the capability to manage these things themselves. And I will share a story. When we were developing this tool, because we heard from our customers that they were spending a lot of time managing it themselves. So before we had it, I was talking to one of our customers, and she said that she spent, and they had a big recurring donation that was really the major thing that they did. She was spending 1 day a week managing recurring donations. That's a huge amount of staff time. So to be able to just eliminate that from uh, their needs is just huge. So make sure that if, as you're expanding recurring gifts, that you have something like this in place to manage it.
100%. And you don't want to discount all the little ways that you can save time on this kind of thing so that you can spend more time building relationships with your donors.
Absolutely.
So we're going to jump into the third and final strategy here and take just a few minutes to go over this. And then we've got the Q&A coming up. So start thinking about the questions you've got as we're going. This third strategy is really central to everything we've been talking about so far. And it's the idea of making sure that you're using trust-centered communications. Let's talk about what that means. Okay, quick story time. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, everyone stopped volunteering because most volunteering was in person, right? My organization was an organization that recruited and mobilized volunteers and dispatched them to hundreds of causes. And so our operations largely halted until we could figure out how to pivot and do some more remote and virtual volunteering opportunities and safe in-person distanced opportunities. But we knew that there was a risk because of this, that we were going to lose connection to some of our supporters and donors. So what we started doing to build a sense of trust and community during this period of uncertainty is a simple virtual town hall. It was an opportunity for people to come together once a month, and then we eventually moved to quarterly online, where they could just hear some of the updates going on in the organization and ask questions and really understand how we were navigating the situation and how they could still stay involved. And this had the effect of bringing people along on our journey. It created a sense of belonging, like we were all in this together, and showed what's really happening. And it really conveyed that our mission was their mission too. So I just share this story to get your wheels turning on how can you create these connection points where people can come together, not just with your organization, but with each other, because that contributes to trust building as well. So when you're looking at your communications, the way that you're talking to donors on your website, in your newsletters, in your emails, etc., here are some things you can make sure that you're doing to ensure that trust is centered. You want to be consistent. People knowing that they can hear from you on a regular pace is something that can build trust. You want to show both your process and your impacts. Impacts are always something you want to be talking about, but I think sharing the process is underrated, but very important. Sharing the process looks like, here's what we tried, here's what didn't work, here's what we learned, here's what we're going to do going forward. It's this idea of building in public, if you're familiar with that idea in business. But doing that builds trust because it adds a layer of transparency. People understand how it all works. Donor-centered language, helping people understand how their contributions make an impact. And then we've talked about the power of volunteers before, but volunteers are some of your best trust ambassadors. In another project that I'm doing with another organization, I'm running a survey on volunteer challenges and barriers. And we're asking, what are some of the who do you need to hear from to trust an organization? And a lot of people are responding so far that when they hear from another volunteer at an organization, that their trust for that organization is enhanced. So volunteers can be great ambassadors for your cause if you can just equip them with the messaging and the tools to do that. All right. Susan's going to talk a little bit more about peer-to-peer because that ties into this whole trust-based communication thing.
Absolutely. And peer-to-peer is really probably one of my favorite things to talk about. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about, we actually participated in a study just recently, studying the impact of adding peer-to-peer fundraising to your fundraising campaigns. But before we do that, let's go ahead and talk about what is peer-to-peer fundraising. Um, so now, a lot of you may already know what peer-to-peer fundraising is, but but I find whenever I give a talk on it, there's always a group of people that don't know. So maybe go on to the next slide. But very simply, it is allowing your supporters to have their own fundraising pages. So they can send those pages out to their friends, their family members, their coworkers, and essentially ask for a donation for your nonprofit themselves on your behalf, right? So essentially, they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you. But, Amber was just talking about that trust factor because they have this relationship with the individual that they're asking for the donation. It's really a lot easier for them to get that donation coming in to your organization than if you, the organization, was asking them yourself. The other interesting thing about peer-to-peer fundraising is it's also introducing your organization to brand new donors, people they would have probably never known about your organization if it hadn't been an introduction from someone in their trusted network. So let's go into the research that we just did. Now, so we are just logistically, Click and Pledge is located right next to the Virginia Tech campus. We're located in the Corporate Research Center in Blacksburg, Virginia. So they wanted to study the impact of adding peer-to-peer fundraising to fundraising campaigns. So if you're looking at the slide, you can see on that left-hand side, that's kind of, we call that a fundraiser widget. It's usually an image of the person telling a little bit about why they feel you should support the nonprofit that they care about. Typically there's a fundraising goal that they're trying to meet, right? So that's pretty standard peer to peer. But what this research found is that fundraising campaigns that incorporated peer to peer fundraising, they raised more money, they had more unique donors, and more sustained giving. And that's like everything you're looking for, all in one campaign. But the kicker is, like, what percent of campaigns actually included a peer-to-peer aspect? And that's what I found really fascinating. So just so you know, this looked at 8 years of data that we had. Only 9% of fundraising campaigns included peer-to-peer fundraising as a part of it. So you're talking about more donations, more unique donors, more recurring giving from peer to peer. So it's really something that's extremely powerful, but it's being underused. So another key component of peer to peer fundraising is the social comparison piece. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So this is what I find so fascinating about peer-to-peer is really the psychology behind it, right? Because in one aspect, right, people as fundraisers, they have a fundraising goal. So they're motivated to reach their fundraising goal. A part of peer-to-peer is wanting to look good. We all want to look good. So fundraisers are motivated to reach their fundraising goal. Another component of it is recognition and social comparison. So typically with peer-to-peer fundraising, you see something like the image on the left there, where there's a list of your donors, their names, how much they've given, their comments, things like that, their comments of support to the fundraiser, because they have that direct relationship with them. This is really a key piece of the puzzle because this fundraising is public. They see their name out there. They see the amount that they've donated. So as that donor is deciding what type of gift that they're making, they're thinking through that. They're probably looking at that list. I am absolutely guilty of this. When I get asked for a peer-to-peer fundraiser, I look to see what everybody else is doing. I look for names I recognize because I want to look good, so there's that consideration. People want to look generous. They want to make sure that they're not, you know, the low donor on the list. And typically they will round up those donations to match what other donors are doing. And this is very different than if somebody were making a direct donation to an organization, because that's kind of hidden. That's between you and the organization. Because there's a public aspect to it, the person that you are in a network with will know what you've donated. The public will donate. It tends to motivate us to give at higher amounts. So definitely something to think about as you're thinking about adopting peer-to-peer as one of your strategies. Now, going back to what Amber said about people who can be involved with peer-to-peer fundraising, definitely volunteers are a great option to think about doing this. And there's actually some research that shows that volunteers can actually gain higher donations than other people participating in peer-to-peer. Again, I think it's because of that trust factor. People know that they have a direct relationship with the organization. They're already donating their time. So obviously they know that that is a great organization. People might want to reward them for that behavior with a bigger donation. They're also really good at conveying why your organization is so important. And with like platforms like ours, we have a special area and it's called My Story, where they can have a statement of why they're supporting you, but they can do things like add images. So if they have pictures of themselves volunteering for your organization or have a longer statement to tell their full story, they can do that. But even beyond volunteers. So let's say that your organization doesn't have a lot of volunteers, and for whatever reason, there's plenty of other people that can do peer-to-peer fundraising for you. And a lot of times we see student groups engaged with organizations doing that. We see a lot with colleges, even high school students. We've seen some organizations have relationship with student groups in high schools. And I think one of the things that's changed since the time that I grew up, my son is in high school and they have to do a certain amount of volunteer time, right? They are more tapped into the nonprofit community than I was at the same age. So, they've already started to know the system. Maybe they could be fundraise for you as well. But we talk to organizations all the time. You might have a community group that's really interested in your organization. It could be your own staff. It could be people that receive services from your organization. Depending on what you do, that may or may not be appropriate. We often see organizations doing this with their board members. They maybe have a board member campaign once a year. Again, kind of depends on who your board members are. You might have some that are great cheerleaders for your organization. You might have some board members that are much happier writing that big check to you. That's fine. But for those people that are well connected in your communities, willing to advocate for you, they can be great fundraisers for you. Again, list here people that have attended events, family members, friends, donors. It essentially can be anyone. And my advice, so if you haven't done any type of peer-to-peer fundraising before, don't, just as Amber said, try it out, test it out. Maybe take a handful of people or even two or three, test the waters, learn from it, and then you can grow from there because it really is something that once you start doing, you can kind of realize it's actually pretty simple. You've just got to start with this, figuring out who the people that are going to be the best advocates for you. So
I
that's
love
my spiel
this.
on peer to peer. I do love peer to peer.
And like you were saying, like you're so right. Like it can be very, very, very powerful, but not a lot of people are utilizing it. So I think that's something we're definitely going to see grow in 2026.
And we have had so many conversations about peer to peer this year so far. I mean, I don't know. I would say over half of the conversations we've had have been about either increasing peer to peer with organizations or starting new peer to peer fundraisers.
Absolutely. All right, folks, it is time for the Q&A. So go ahead. I do see a couple of questions here to start us off, but now is a great time to drop your thoughts in here. Susan and I will tag team these. And if you have any technical questions about Click and Pledge and its capabilities itself, we also have some of Susan's colleagues here who can support those questions as well. But let's just jump right in. Susan, can you see these questions as well?
I can.
Okay. Okay. So let's start at the top. All right, the question is monthly giving. If we spend 99% of our money or some amount in the summer and have a few monthly donors, is it worth pushing new monthly donors and retaining one-time donors? So if you're in this situation, I would do some additional work connecting with your current pool of monthly donors, even if it's small, to get to know them a little bit better, understand what they love about your cause. And the reason is you can get some really good data from your current supporters that can then help you message your future efforts to recruit more monthly givers. So and also keep in mind, one-time donors could become recurring donors, right? So work on that donor stewardship process and building that trust-based communication that we talked about in between gifts, and hopefully that number would rise in monthly givers as well. Hopefully that answered your question, but if not, feel free to drop a clarification in there. Susan, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this one. Jay asks, what is the data saying about paper communication versus digital when giving things?
Yeah, and so much of our communication now is digital. Especially here at Click. I mean, we receipts, communication, things like that. A lot of ways you can have that automation to do communications that way. So I do know that we have a certain segment of our customers that still do, you know, a lot of printing as well, but I don't have any specific data on, I just know that it seems like digital is typically winning these days, just the ease of use of it. And the fact that we are all on these, daggone devices all day long, um, that's where we're reading most of our content and getting most of our communications. What are
Yeah,
your thoughts on that?
I would agree. And Jay, and also I see someone else asked the same question. There might be some generational differences. But I once heard someone say, someone was remarking, I got a donor appeal in the mail, but I've only ever given online. And they were talking about how you should try to match the communication style that your donors are using back on you, right? So, some people might enjoy the occasional paper thing just because it's novel, but I think it's more about what you put in an email and less about the fact that it is an email. If you can make it personalized, don't overbrand like a quick impact email. I think that donors would love that.
I do want to add one more thing to it, because I think that is a very good point. I was thinking back to one peer-to-peer campaign that I was requested to donate to, and I received a physical letter for it. It, friend of mine from high school, her daughter was participating in this fundraiser. And what it did in the letter is it provided the whole link of where to go to donate. So I had to, so it was an online fundraiser, but I received a piece of paper with a huge link. So I had to make sure that I got every character right to find this young lady's specific donation page. If you're going to be using print, make sure for any type of donor request, make sure you include a QR code on it so that people can go directly to that donation form. Lots of people aren't going to have the patience to try to find you with like a long link. There's always that chance of error typing. So QR codes are great to have to put on your print material to guide people exactly where they need to go.
I completely agree. And click and pledge folks, I do see a question here that might look like a question about a feature. So regarding the monthly donor button. So I don't know if you're able to type that answer in there for them while Susan and I tackle a couple more of these. Here's one. Is a dedicated CRM tool necessary for peer-to-peer fundraising? Can you do it with just email and social media?
Yeah, I'll answer that. You do not need to have a CRM tool to do peer-to-peer fundraising. We have customers that use a CRM or not with peer-to-peer fundraising. Yeah, so you can keep it as simple as you want it to be, or if you want to have that, super rich CRM along with peer-to-peer, you can do that as well. But you are not limited if you don't have a CRM.
Awesome. And I know we just have a couple minutes left, so we'll get to these final two that I see in the Q&A box as well. I think I saw a couple in the chat, but we'll try to reference those after this. But Jim asks, what advice do you have for fundraising to create an endowment to fund future commitments like scholarships? For something like that, you're probably talking about bringing together your closest core group of supporters to have a conversation with them about investing significantly in that sort of future state for your organization. So that's not something I would start a public campaign for right off the bat. I would start by building up a strong foundation with your core supporters first and see if you can get commitments for at least 50% of your goal amount before you do any kind of public campaigning around that. That's my thought on that one. And then just doing this one more, Susan, do you have any advice on connecting, contacting, fostering relationships with grant foundations? I have some thoughts, but I'd love to hear yours as well.
Well, in I would say our focus is fundraising, not necessarily dealing with grant foundations themselves, but again, so I think I will defer that to you, Amber.
Yeah, and sometimes grant foundations can offer some great matches for personal donations as well, right? So that's one strategy, that personal donation component that Click and Pledge handles as well. They can be paired together. But a lot of grant foundations have program officers that are completely willing to have a quick meeting with you or a phone call. Don't be afraid to just reach out and ask. Worst they can say is no or not right now. But I would say building a relationship when you can is something that's important to do. All right, we are at time, so I'm just going to take a final moment to let you know to watch your inbox after this because we're going to send, I promised that you'd get a checklist on how to sort of assess where you are with some of these adaptable fundraising strategies. I'll send the recording and I'll send some additional resources as well as some information about Click and Pledge. But Susan, do you have any final thoughts for us before we wrap up?
No, I just really appreciate being a part of the conversation, and I love everybody participating in this. Just thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. It's really great to see all of you from around the country. And like I said, watch your inboxes. Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.